There's a saying in Romanian. It goes something like this: those who don't work don't make mistakes. The core message is to move forward, to do the thing you need to do, even if you make mistakes along the way. And generally, that's a good advice no matter what you're talking about. But of course, sometimes in history, that wasn't the case, and this entire series proves that point. From time to time, an unintentional or intentional act can have some pretty wild consequences. But what about when you don't do anything? Well, history, it punishes inaction too. Hi, my name is Sebastian, and you're watching Mistakes That Changed the World. In the last 10 years before the American Civil War, the United States had 3 presidents in a row who, in hindsight, simply did not live up to their position. The issue of slavery, which was wrapped up in the issue of states' rights and federal jurisdiction, was the main topic of the 1850s. And yet, despite the obvious importance of the issue, amazingly little was done to resolve it. Slavery was not a subject that could be ignored or easily agreed upon. The United States was among the last places in the modern world where slavery was still legal. Great Britain, France, and most of Europe had already abolished it. By the way, for those who don't know, it was Great Britain that, for the first time in world history, initiated and fought to outlaw slavery and then spent money and forces to enforce the law. Anyway, if we review the terms of the 3 presidents who served from 1850 until Lincoln was elected, it becomes pretty clear that ignoring a problem and not doing anything about it is just as bad as making the wrong choices, or maybe even worse. First up is President Millard Fillmore. Well, actually, let's back up a bit, because before Fillmore became the 13th President of the United States, he served as the Vice President of Zachary Taylor, a man that made some pretty stupid choices in the summer of 1850. That year, on July 4th, President Taylor spent quite a few hours in the hot sun during the celebrations at the Washington Monument. Once he got back to the White House, he needed to cool down, so he took his fill of cold water, ate a large bowl of cherries, and then he topped it all off with some delicious ice cream. Okay, nothing wrong about that. I mean, we all do these things on those hot summer days. Problem is that it just so happened that Washington, D.C. was in the middle of a virulent cholera epidemic. Today, such epidemics are very rare and infections are mostly survivable, but back then that wasn't the case. Now, guess how cholera is transmitted? If you guessed through contaminated water, you guessed right. The public was warned not to drink the city water, nor to use it to wash fruits and vegetables or to consume ice made from it. And Taylor did all 3 of these things in the same day. And then he died 4 days later. Thus, Vice President Filmore became the President of the United States of America in what was one of the most turbulent periods in its history. Before he died, Taylor proved to be a pretty strong and decisive leader, but Millard not so much. While Taylor had blocked the Compromise of 1850, Filmore saw it as a necessary solution. The package of laws recognized California as a free state and introduced harsher punishments for the escaped slaves that were to be returned from the North. But the Fugitive Slave Act was unenforceable in the abolitionist North, so the southern states felt betrayed. And so, the Compromise of 1850 ultimately did more harm than good. Now, you might expect some action from Fillmore to repair the damage, but the president did nothing else, and was abandoned by his own party in 1852. Unfortunately, more than 2 years had been lost due to inaction. Next up is Franklin Pierce, a last-minute candidate who first appeared on the 35th ballot of the Democratic National Convention. The party was divided between pro-slavery representatives from the South and those who were just as strongly against it, the abolitionists. Pierce stood out since he was from the North but supported slavery. He won the nomination and then he was elected president. But once in office, he proved to be completely ineffective in managing the issue of slavery at any level. In fact, Pierce did more to destroy what had already been done when he attempted to act. When the issue of the expansion of the United States into Western territories came forth, with the question of which would be free or slave states, the president assisted Frederick Douglass in dismantling the Missouri Compromise. Citizens of Kansas and Nebraska, whether slave or free, were granted the right to vote. The violence that followed gave rise to the term Bleeding Kansas, deepening the divide between the North and South. President Pierce never succeeded in managing the slavery issue, or much else for that matter. Most of the time, he drank and quarreled with his critics. By the end of his term, Pierce had proven to be abysmal in diplomacy and had made a habit of being a hindrance rather than achieving anything concrete. He even alienated his own party. In 1856, the motto of the Democratic Convention was "Anyone but Pierce." When James Buchanan took office, everyone forgot to invite President Pierce to the inaugural ceremony. Because of him, 4 more crucial years were lost and the American nation became even more divided. The next president on our list was James Buchanan. He was a very successful lawyer, amassing a considerable fortune from his profession. This was fortunate for him because it ensured his livelihood after he finished his term, a term that earned him the title of the worst president in US history. Of course, these were arguably also the worst years in US history, but still. So why is he the worst president? Well, when the issue of slavery overshadowed all other national matters and deeply divided the nation, Buchanan proved to be too weak a leader to steer his ship. The former lawyer had been elected more for his position during the 1856 elections than for who he was or what principles he held. While everyone else was embroiled in the violence that followed the Kansas-Nebraska Act, Buchanan was serving as an ambassador in England. This made him virtually the only popular and untarnished candidate the Democrats could present in the elections. The new Republican Party performed well, but the Democratic machine managed to win once again. Now, the only problem was that Buchanan had no idea what was happening around him. As president, he was indecisive and had both pro-slavery and anti-slavery stances until he tangled himself up in both. It's difficult to find any substantial achievement in any field for President Buchanan, even though this was a time when the United States was quite literally falling apart. At its weakest, although it needed strong and decisive leaders, the United States got the opposite. In a list of the worst presidents in history, all 3 of these presidents from the 1850s are among the top 10. Some argue that James Buchanan was the worst, while others vote for Franklin Pierce. All 3 were utterly ineffective in handling the most pressing issue of their presidencies. By the time Abraham Lincoln replaced Buchanan as president, the nation was already deeply divided, and soon it was at war with itself. 3 individuals who led the nation did nothing to stop this, and by doing nothing, they condemned the United States to a brutal, long, and bloody civil war that killed hundreds of thousands and entrenched a North-South division that in a very real sense persists to this day. I hope this video was interesting enough to have inspired you to look into it further on your own. If you liked it, leave a like and subscribe. You can leave your comments downstairs, and you can also check out my Patreon page if you want to support me. I do hope to see you next time. Bye.